is where the rulebook ends and the real brand talk begins. Welcome to On Brand. Welcome to Off Script.
Behind every enduring brand is an architect, someone who translates belief into language, culture into design, and vision into story. At Makosa Africa, that architect is Ntsika, a cultural strategist and communicator who helps craft how African identity is seen, felt, and understood on the world stage. His work reminds us that culture isn't static, it's alive, layered, and ever-evolving. Yet bringing that vitality into a modern brand requires discipline, empathy, and a clear point of view. In this conversation, we unpack how heritage becomes narrative, how symbols turn into strategy, and how authenticity can thrive in a global industry quick to commodify difference. Behind the brand, there's somebody that then translates it into a voice, a feeling, just what we experience on the outside. And I think sometimes, a lot of the times we forget that there is that person behind the scene. But there's also a foundation that comes up. And I did a little bit of snooping and I saw that you were a writer, you were a poet.
And multiple lifetimes.
How does this come into creating who Ntsika is, to be able to then align to say, this is my voice and these are the spaces that I want to play in?
Well, it's a brilliant question. And I think to really be honest, poetry, music, writing, anything of that sort leads to storytelling. And in any conversation around branding and marketing, storytelling is the most key, utmost personable aspect of the brand that people can latch on. I always say in the great words of my Diba, he says, you speak to people, you can get to their minds, but you speak to them in their language, you get through their hearts. And I think that's the small snippet as to some of the work that I do, is to make maybe the brand personable, and be it through poetry. It's still a form of writing, because we go from poetry to copywriting to press releases, press rollouts, creative ideas. And I think as a team, we've worked on curating a content element from the brand. And so I would call myself a shadow warrior. Like, we are always behind the scenes, but we're doing very impactful work.
And how did this collaboration start with Makosa?
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting you mentioned that. It's like, in terms of, this has probably been one of the utmost I'd say even calling. Like, when he started, I always remember with Latuma that it was a conversation, me being in the creative scene, him being in the creative scene, a student but still moving, and he had an idea to create a exhibition. And in that, it came through in chats, that I was also someone that he kind of knew that there was an element of something that's work around the eventing space, poetry. And it's like, I'm about to do my first exhibition in the city that we're both from, and I dove in and head first, tried to do that, and I don't think I've ever looked back. Close to a decade ago, and then I think about 7 years ago, I formally said, you know what, this is something I think is a great brand. I did my thesis on the brand, when I was doing my honors, and I thought this would be a great element of showing, also an honoring of whatever I'm studying, to translate it into the brand. And from that, never look back. And I think Makosa has been a great vessel for us as young people fulfilling our dreams.
Yes. And how do you take something so, I would say, sacred and symbolic and translate it into modern language the way you do into digital?
Yeah. Well, it's simple. It's a lived experience. I think part of the conversation we also are trying to have with the patrons today is that language is a lived experience. You say Marcosa, you can tell it's a people, it's a language, it's a brand, it's a culture. You say Motswana, it's a language, it's a people, it's a brand, it's a culture, it's food. So I think that's what I've gone to realize through, one, the studying element of it. It's easy to translate it because you can create it into something that's personable. However, because it's a lived experience, it's not foreign to what we know.
Yeah.
It's everything we know.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge, which you're still trying to get through every day, is how do you translate that globally? But whereas we absorb a phone, we are wearing suits as gentlemen. What is iaparo? Tsaruna is Batu, and what does that look like? And so that's what I think we've tried to do and successfully so in other elements. And I think I would say my role is to translate culture.
Yeah. And talking about translating culture to a global platform or space, what would you say were some of the challenges you've experienced in doing that?
Goes again with language. Things can be easily mistranslated, misconstrued into something else. One of the biggest challenges to demystify the element of what it means to be Africa and African, because the world's gaze and our viewpoint and their viewpoint through media has been another way. And our role is to always try to turn that around. That's one. Number two would be ecosystems. We find that we suffer because we're lacking in ecosystems and we go into a world that has ecosystems and that's what they succeed in. But you look into the infrastructure, you look into the wealth of knowledge, the reserves of culture, we have all of that.
Yeah.
Maybe I would say the biggest challenge is being able to translate that fully, and also ecosystems, and I dare also say support.
Yeah. One would say you are the blueprint of sorts in terms of creating ecosystems that work really well. Where do you think African brands in general fall short?
Um, I'll put all of us there in the sense that we receive to feel like we are blueprint. I think we also are students that are learning, but I'd say we've succeeded in certain things and people look at us in another way. So I'd say where African brands holistically fall short is understanding the business of whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
You find that you go to a market, you can have umama acting sele and they sell you the earrings that they made by hand. But if you look at the thread and the business structure of that, the tourist can purchase that, sell it back to us as a refined, perfect item that represents the continent, and we wear it.
Yeah.
So I think it's the element of the business of it. I always say we always also studying and learning the business of fashion. So it's not just we wear it, we are on the other side of it and we're learning the business of it. And I think throughout generation in history and culture, music, food, um, acting, production. When we don't get and understand the business, that's where there's an element of falling short because we then can be exploited. We may not know our worth, and the finances may not always be there because someone is asking, if I want to support you financially, give me what a return on investment is. If you don't even know and understand what the ROI is meant to be,
Yeah.
it then means that there's a lack in understanding the business of whatever you're producing.
Yeah. And I think there's also a hunger to be part of whether the African experience when it comes to brands in general. How do you ensure Makosa is celebrated and not tokenized in that journey of everybody wanting a piece of you?
You are touching a sore point. But in terms of one, the tokenization also starts with, I think we said it perfectly. There's a colleague of mine we were speaking with, and I'm going to segue a little bit, where we had an American team that were braiding hair. And the element, it was also trying to galvanize the room, Zoe, my colleague, and she highlighted that one, as a brand that is for the dignity of African people and the culture, by you being part of that, you are not appropriating, you're appreciating, which is a way of bringing them closer to understand, oh, we are also part of it. So if we're doing African hair, it's not me as an American doing African hair. It's me being a human and going through an African lived experience and pushing that out to the globe. And I think once they got that, that would be my way of answering the element of how we feel like as a brand, we don't go through tokenization, is that we feel at the core we understand and respect culture. At first it was Makosa Baila Duma, it was his interpretation of the esteem of Kosa people, the culture. But we've gone to call ourselves Makosa Africa because we are inspired by the continent, and Makosa itself is a moment, is a brand, but our muse and our viewpoint is Africa.
Okay. And we're going to close off this conversation with a little game. I think you saw it earlier, where we kind of tap into your head in terms of what's behind Ntsika. Is there a campaign that has shifted how you think about storytelling?
I'll say shifted, but it was one of the most brilliant campaigns I've seen thus far, um, in terms of storytelling, which was brilliant. And I was like so happy that it went mainstream, was the idea of the Vaseline campaign. And it's literally a child whose face is being smeared, and the tagline is that "Umntana kagogo." And I'm like, that you can know anywhere you go,
Yeah.
that you'll know everywhere you go. And I think that was one of the most cultural moments I've seen in mainstream media.
Because we grew up with kind of
We understand.
and they will fight with your face.
We understand.
And you know, I think there's an aspect of fashion that is very
Yes.
it's about perfection, and the aesthetics of every day when you deal with the brand. So how do you then come and accommodate vulnerability in the team or in dealing with the brand?
It's tough because I always say as humans, it's us first. I do feel like as Ntsika, it has to be me first. What is my ability and what's my vulnerability when it comes to that? You said it perfectly. It's like we feel like we're holding something so sacred and that at times can cripple you. I live by this mantra, which is tough because I always feel like it puts me in those position and I manifest it to the world, which I don't like it because it's pressure. I go by this mantra, which is pressure is a privilege.
Yeah.
I think we're privileged to have an opportunity to have a brand so sacred that is in our hands to shape as young dynamic people. It's also the fact that we're not holding just anything, it's culture. We're here in Botswana as an element of being cultural architects, as you said. And that's also it's a nod, but at the same time, it's an honor and a responsibility.
Yes.
So I think we take it with that. And I think that's the best way I can kind of give you an answer there.
What's one principle you'd never compromise in representing African heritage?
Woof. One principle, two.
Okay.
Two. I'll give two.
We'll take them.
The first one is Africa is not for sale.
Oh, love that.
I don't think that needs to be explained, but that is our lived experience. And you see it all the time where there's an element of how can I buy this from you or how can we believe. And the second one is uh community, and we live it by umntu ngumntu ngabantu, mutu Gabatu, but in that it also says that we are here as a representative of not just the community, those who came before us. We also are representing there's this notion of future ancestors. When we get that, what we're doing here right now is as important as handing over to our children's children's children. And because we are children of people's children's children, that's the second one that I always say we should never compromise on the fact that everything we do is with, and is about community.
Awesome. Lovely way to close it. Thank you, Ntsika, for joining the conversation.
Really, thank you so much.